Hello, music fans. I listened to 12 albums that came out on October 27th, 2023, and here are my first impressions of them. I'll go in my order of preference, and most of these are metal, rock, and prog albums. Those are the genres I usually cover here on my Death by Unicorn channel. So if you're interested in staying in the loop on what's new in those genres, definitely subscribe to my channel. And without further ado, let's start with Glass Hammer and their album Arise, which is progressive rock. It's got some doom metal, some psychedelic and space rock influences in here too. This is the 21st album by this American band. There's some solid female vocals on here. There's also some male co-lead vocals on other songs as well. It ends with an almost 17-minute epic song called Return of Daedalus, which is mostly instrumental with bluesy guitar lead shredding over top of a jam, but the last couple minutes have some vocals. Some of my favorite tracks on this album are Lost, and then the second last song, Arise. The album has moments that remind me of Porcupine Tree, some of the spacey psychedelic moments, kind of like early Porcupine Tree. It also has some moments that remind me of King Crimson, some of the intense moments, and moments that remind me of Tool, more of those hypnotic moments. Really cool album. Check it out if you haven't already. Next on my list is Pattern Seeking Animals and their album Spooky Action at a Distance. This is progressive rock. It's the fourth album by this American band, and my favorite track on here is Somewhere North of Nowhere. This band's been very consistent. All four of their albums are solid, and this is no exception. Definitely a great album. Check it out. And my third one that I'm going to mention today is changing gears here to a more extreme band. They're called End, and the album's called The Sin of Human Frailty, and this is Mathcore. It's got some of that metalcore and industrial metal influences in there. It's the second album by this American band. If you're a fan of bands like Car Bomb, The Dillinger Escape Plan, Meshuggah, I think you'll like this. It also reminds me of early material from a lesser known Canadian band called The End, which is probably a bit of a coincidence because this band's name is End and they remind me of The End. It's a very chaotic and brutal but super engaging album. I like that it's pretty short. It's only about 30 minutes long, and I also really enjoy this band's first album. I think this could be one of the new greats in this kind of mathcore style. Next up, the fourth one I'm going to talk about is Sky Empire and their album The Shifting Tectonic Plates of Power Part 1. This is kind of progressive power metal. It's got some of that hard rock and heavy metal influences in there, and it's the second album by this band from the UK. It features the amazing Jeff Scott Soto on lead vocals, who has sang with Yngwie Malmsteen and Journey in the past. He's also currently the vocalist of Sons of Apollo and Trans-Siberian Orchestra. If you're a fan of Symphony X, I think you'll like this. The vocals have that same Russell Allen power to them. There's great neoclassical shredding guitar and great keyboards. Of course, fans of Sons of Apollo will also like this. The opening track on this album just has amazing guitar shredding right out of the gate, and it's a prog epic as well, so that's great. And then the last track is also a prog epic, so they have a really long song to start and long song to end. I enjoyed it. I don't think the vocals are for everybody. They have a bit of that cheesy power metal vibe to them, so maybe not everyone will like it, but the performances on here are amazing, and I don't think anyone could deny that. And next up is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard and their album The Silver Chord. Now this is different for King Gizzard. It's electronic, and they have done some electronic albums before, but usually they're more of a psychedelic rock and a prog rock band. Occasionally they dabble in thrash metal. Really they dabble in every genre actually, but this is an interesting sound for them. It's electronic, it's got that dream pop, psychedelic, and a bit of prog influences in there too. It's their 25th album. They're a very prolific Australian band. You never know what genre you'll get with King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, because almost every album has a different style. Uh, they've even done, jazz fusion, uh, dream pop, and then I mentioned electronic, psych rock, prog, thrash metal. But this is one of their albums that sounds the most like electronic dance music to me. It's similar to the vibe of Made in Timeland that they made in 2022, but also reminiscent of Butterfly 3000 for me, because there's a lot of polyrhythms and odd time signatures on here. There's also some pieces of Omnium Gatherum on here. In particular, there's some rap vocals on some songs. And on Spotify, there's both short and extended versions of each track. In terms of my overall King Gizzard album rankings, I feel like I'd put The Silver Chord below Changes, but above Made in Timeland in quality. It's definitely not one of my favorite albums by them. Probably middle of the road for their discography for me, but they always put out great quality, so I'm along for the ride. Next, I want to mention Closure in Moscow and their album Soft Hell. This is kind of progressive rock, but it's very poppy. It's got that alternative and indie rock influences in there. It's their third album. They're from Australia, and I saw them live opening for Protest the Hero many years ago. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember what year it was. They were very entertaining to see. I think if you're a fan of the Mars Volta, you'll like this, because they sound a bit similar but have a bit more indie pop rock vibes thrown in. I also think fans of Good Tiger will like this. The album is really fun and adventurous, but there were a few moments that made me cringe, especially when the vocalist went for some of the really high belted notes, especially in the last track on the album. It really sounded like he was straining and maybe a bit off key. So this album, I think, is very hit or miss depending on the song. I still recommend you check it out, but I think their previous albums were a bit better than this. And next up is Fish on Friday and their album 8mm. This is progressive rock, and it's the sixth album by this Belgian band. My favorite track on here on first listen was Flame, which has a nice acoustic guitar. This is more accessible and easy listening progressive rock. It's not too out there. It kind of reminds me of Radiohead sometimes. But yeah, it's pretty well done. No complaints. Next up is Immortal Guardian and their album Unite and Conquer. This is progressive power metal. It's the third album by this American band. Really great guitar playing on here, really powerful vocals. If you're a fan of bands like Dragon Force and Symphony X, you'll like this. I think, like with the Sky Empire band, the sticking point for this for most people might be the vocals. The kind of cheesy power metal voice, I know, is make or break for some people. But if you want to listen to some great performances, definitely check this out if you can look past that cheesiness. And next up is Guru Guru and their album Make Less Babies. This is alternative art rock with some indie rock and math rock influences. It's the third album by this Belgian band, not to be confused with the German krautrock band that has the same name as them. This was a solid album, but unlikely to make my top 100 of the year just due to how many great releases that came out this year, including all the ones that I've already mentioned in this video. So I don't know if it'll really stick with me, but it is well done. And I've got three more to go through here. Of Virtue released an album called Omens. This is melodic metalcore, and it's the fourth album by this American band. I heard the single Cut Me Open before the album came out. It had this catchy, clean singing as well as intense screaming. It was well done, so I added it to my list to check out, and it is a solid metalcore album. Also unlikely to make my top 100 of the year list. Nothing revolutionary here, just catchy, groovy, bouncy metalcore that's well done. And the last two I'm going to mention are two more pop albums that I just checked out of curiosity. I checked out Poppy and her album Zig. This is pop rock. It's got a lot of interesting influences in there from electronic, industrial, alternative, grunge, punk, metal, shoegaze, experimental. But it is very pop. It's the fifth album by this American singer-songwriter. I prefer her previous albums that are more like on the metal side. I like her metal sound more than her pop sound. This is a lot more like bubblegum pop music. It still has a bit of an edge. Like she does the odd scream, so it's almost like a couple songs are like screamo pop. Some of the songs on this album are pretty irritating, to be honest, and lyrics are cringy. Um, but other songs on the album are fun and great to listen to. It's really a mixed bag here, but definitely interesting. And lastly, I want to mention Taylor Swift released 1989 Taylor's version, which I checked out. And this is kind of more like synthy pop music. It's got every now and then a bit of her roots in country folk and a bit of rock influence in there too. But it's very much just a pop record. And it's the fourth re recorded album she's done. As she's been re recording her albums due to who owns the masters of her existing catalog, so that she can own it and she can benefit from all the music. And it's fine. It's definitely tiring for me to listen to from start to finish and to hear all the cliche, boring chord progressions that have been done a million times. However, her melody writing is always great. It's catchy. I think Speak Now, Taylor's version that she released earlier in the year, is a better album, but this one's not that far off. And that's it for my first impressions of these 12 albums that came out on October 27th. Let me know what you think of these down in the comments. Is there anything else great that came out recently? Also, let me know. And until next time, peace out.